And we are live. We are back. Everybody, welcome back to Bigfoot Forest Giants podcast. It's been a minute. Had a whole few things go wrong. Not go wrong, just, kind of life. Good things, actually, positive things. Bobby sold his house, got another house, and he has been in that transition of getting packed and unpacked and whatnot. So I'm riding solo. Bobby's living out of box tonight, which is it's allowable. I mean, it could be worse. He's in a new house, in a neighborhood with an HOA. We're missing Bobby tonight, but I'm probably sure he's going to be chiming in on his phone every now and then. And I've been out. My wife and I, and my daughter, we've been sick for good Lord, going on just about 3 weeks. Some kind of upper respiratory issue that we've been having, and it's kind of a pain when every 10 seconds you're coughing and clearing your throat and whatnot and all that stuff. But tonight we have a great guest. But before, his name's George Kennedy. Going to bring him on. He was on our last guest. He has quite a bit more stuff to share, and we're eagerly excited. But some of you guys know, and some that you don't. So I'll just fill you in a little bit. We have a daughter. Her name is Carly. She is the love of my life. She's 6 years old. She is autistic. And what I can say about this little girl that I've said to people before is she is the reason that I get up every day. I find the strength to literally go on every day because of this little girl. She's a beautiful, awesome little girl. And if anybody has known anybody or has a relative or a child with autism, you understand the day-to-day struggles. Carly's nonverbal. She has sensory issues. She doesn't like my tone. So I can't talk like I do with you guys to my daughter. I literally have to talk like this. I have to talk like Mickey Mouse all the time. I have to say this and I have to say this. And so when I'm scolding my sons, I have to scold them in Mickey Mouse tone, because if I use my tone, it upsets her. We have to adjust our whole atmosphere around Carly, and our focus from the time we get up to the time we go to bed is her happiness, because her happiness in the house determines our happiness. And it's a lot of work. From the time you get up to the time you go to bed, you have to devote all of it, and you have to match her energy. And so I just want to play a little video of my daughter. She's at school at Beyond the Label in Jensen Beach. And Miss Burnell, her teacher and the owner, has been a blessing for us. And she's really brought our daughter just out. She's blossomed. She's made advances. And and when I watch this video, I probably watched it 30 times. Almost every time I tear up. So let me share this with you before I do. This is my daughter, Carly.
Let me see. Wait. You gonna pull my shirt down. Hold on, girl. I'm coming. Get your ball. Get your ball. Get your ball, girl. Here. Come on, boo. Get your ball. While you done come back here messing with me. What's up, girl? What you want? You come to mess with Miss Burnell. What you want? Come on. Come on. Tell him you want to be picked up. Come on. Say hey. Say hey. Get out my shirt. Get out of there. Say hey, girl. Get out of there before you show everything. Give me my remote control. Give me that remote control. Give me. Let me see. Still in the remote control.
So that is what gives me strength every day to get up. My wife as well. And I could not do this without my wife. I could not get up and do this by myself with Carly without my wife. and vice versa. I think she could do it, but she says she couldn't, but I think she could do it. I just wanted to share that with you guys. Sometimes, we see people on screen on TV and we don't really know much about their personal life other than what they show or whatnot. But I wanted to bring a little more personal things out to today's show, just to, let people see a little bit of where my happiness is at. And my happiness is at its peak when hers is at her peak. So without all that, we'll put that back in our minds, or whatever you want to do with it, but let's go ahead and bring on George. But before we bring on George, one more thing I want to do is I want to say hi to everybody in the chat. I got my cousin in here, Miss Jamie, and hey Patrick, how you doing, bud? And Miss Diane, and go back, Miss Lady Hawk, how you doing? Thanks for being here today. There we go. That we got lots of chats in there. Thanks everybody for being here, Miss Diane, Miss Cashew, and everybody, and all the people in the chat. Thanks for joining us and sharing, a little personal moment with us. But if any of you guys are in there watching, if you guys know anybody that would like to share their encounter and they're scared and maybe they're not sure if they want to share their encounter, just let them know that Bigfoot Forest Giants is a place that they can come and share their encounter and get it off their chest. It'll be like a little bit of therapy for them. And what I've realized with mine encounter and my experiences is the more I talk about them, the easier it gets to manage the emotions that comes along with having an experience. And for me, that was big. And sometimes I still have a tough time telling my encounter. And a lot of it depends on who you're speaking with too, because you feel more ability to open up and talk about a little more of the details. And sometimes it's just those little tiny details that people don't really realize that really takes you back. But I want to bring on George, Mr. George Kennedy. George Kennedy was a former West Virginia state trooper. He's had quite a bit of experiences. He might still be having some ongoing activity near his house and in his surrounding area. And he's got some stories of encounters from the locals. And I can't wait to hear all this stuff. He's a great dude, great guy, good father, just involved with the community. Last time before last, I can't remember. He had a neighbor that had a health issue, and helping people is in George's heart and in his soul. And you can tell it when you talk to him. And so he went and helped out somebody in need. And this is just a podcast. This could wait another year before we have another one. It's the important things, and that kind of thing is important. So let's bring on George. Everybody say hello to George and welcome George back. Hey, bud, how you doing?
I'm doing good.
Great to have you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to joggle around this screen.
Okay.
So nope, I don't want to be the big one. Nope, that's not how I want it. That is the worst. Okay, I don't want that. I want you to be the whoa. I want you to be that isn't not. Nope. Nope. So that works. Just like that.
That'll work.
Dang it all to heck. I wanted it to be where,
that's perfect.
The main purpose that people could see.
Yeah.
So I know that you were here, and we might have some people in the chat that weren't here. So little quick background of yourself one more time, and then we'll get right into it.
Okay.
First off, how have you been?
I've been good. Been a little sick myself. My wife was sick. She had to go to the emergency room. Something going on in the school system. My daughter's been same as you. When you were talking, I was like, yeah, we've been there.
Yeah.
And so, hey, we've had some nice weather the last few days, but just been busy and trying to fight this sickness. Other than that, doing great.
Awesome. Cool. Give us a little recap, if you don't mind.
Okay. A little bit of background for those who don't know. I live in Southern West Virginia. I grew up here, went to college, got into the West Virginia State Police in the early 90s, worked as a trooper for years, and of course got a promotion and whatnot. Later in life, after I retired from the department, I got into public school system. I was a criminal justice instructor. I specialized in officer tactics and survivability, crime scene, things like that. And my wife and I, around 2008 or 9, it's been a while, we decided to move. We were living in Charleston. Charleston got a little bit big for us. She's from the country. I grew up in the country. We decided to move back to the property where I was born and raised. So we moved back, and honestly, that's when all the craziness started happening. And I live in a very rural area here. There's just not many people, and just had a lot of crazy things start happening. And I did not, from a law enforcement perspective, I first thought that maybe someone had me misidentified as maybe a meth cook because of my trash being messed with all the time. But it ultimately led to an eyewitness account that I had. I had a firsthand account, actually, from where I'm sitting. It wasn't about 60 yards from here. And took me a while to come to terms with it. And if I could go back in time, there's so many things I could have documented. It's just, you tend to try to rationalize something that happens strange. You try to find a known explanation when in all reality, there is no known explanation. But after the encounter, I was talking to a guy later, and he said, man, you should consider writing this stuff down to kind of keep it fresh in your mind. So eventually I did. And I have, when you and I talked the last time, I gave you some details about my first encounter, a few other things. And I was looking here. I never wrote any of those down initially, but I have since then, when I started writing things down, I think it was 56 different things. And now what I do, of course, as an investigator, if you see or hear something or come across something, you want to first try to find any reasonable, rational explanation. If you can find anything in nature that would possibly cause this sound or possibly cause the imprint or whatever, I just automatically write it off as natural. If you cannot find that, now you have an unknown. And if you start to have that unknown happen more than 1 or 2 times, well, you have a pattern. That's when I would write it down. That's when I would realize that there's something to this. So once I started doing that, I started keeping a journal, and just by me living here, working at a local school at the time, I would have the opportunity to talk to people, and not that I have any better reputation than anyone. Some people thought I was crazy when I first started talking about this, but people realize this guy's not the type of person to just make up stories. So I would have people privately come to me and talk to me and tell me what had happened. For instance, the last time you and I talked about the one teacher I'd worked with. And so I thought it'd be I could start tonight by telling a few stories of some of the eyewitness encounters that have been relayed to me firsthand. And it's happened here locally around us. Because one of the things that we realized, I can't be the only one it's happening to, my wife and I. There's got to be more people. Well, there's been quite a lot, and some that are pretty interesting. Do you want me to roll with it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Don't spare the details unless if it's, if
Right.
there's somebody who doesn't want you to share or whatnot, obviously.
Well, what I did, I was looking all of this paperwork, and there's so much. I just printed out this journal. And there's just so much. It would take me all night to read all of it. But what I thought I would do is first start with something that happened to my son. He's a National Guard member, and he's also a state trooper himself. And so he's at guard duty this weekend up in Wheeling. He left work yesterday, came home for a few minutes, grabbed his uniform, and took off to Wheeling. He'll be back Sunday night, I think, and he'll go to work Monday. But my son has always been into gun collecting. He loves to collect guns, and I guess I do too. But this was just a few summers back, we have a couple boys that he went to school with, and they just happen to be one of the few neighbors we have in the area. And I won't mention their names. I don't think they would mind, but no one would know them anyway. But just to describe these boys, one of the boys is about 6'5", 280. The other one's probably 6'6", 6'7", 250, 260. They're both very big, strapping young men. My son, again, he played college football. He's the runt of the bunch. At the time, he was about right at 6 foot and 215 pounds, I think is what he weighed. But what had happened earlier, it was either earlier that morning or the day prior. The boy's dad came across some coyotes attacking a yearling deer. And he tried to run the coyotes off of it. By the time he managed to get them off of it, the deer, he realized was going to die, and which it did. And we've had a really bad coyote problem here for a good while. So he took the deer, and his sons like to coyote hunt. So he had mentioned to them, guys, you need to take this deer and hang it up in a tree up by a field somewhere and try to call coyotes in so we can thin some of these out. So they took the deer, and as I'm from where I'm sitting here, it's right behind me, but it'd be like a half mile straight up the mountain. The old Kennedy Cemetery sits back there. And it's, there's no houses. Well, I'm the nearest house, me and the neighbor. So there's nothing there other than the cemetery and an old dirt road you get to it. They took the deer and they hung it in a tree right by the field, by the cemetery. And they thought, well, we'll give it a couple days and we'll go up there late at night and we'll coyote hunt. So the night that they went up, I provided my son with one of those predator game callers. It's a remote controlled caller. You can set the sound, or it can be like an injured rabbit or a injured fawn, that thing.
Yeah.
And you can adjust the volume to where it sounds real. And I had a little, it's like a little piece of fur that's on a stick. And when you turn it on, it shakes. So it looks like a little rodent being attacked. Mm-hmm. And supposedly it'll trigger, a predator's instinct to come in. So my son, now I'll switch to the way he told me the story when he came home that night. They left about 9 p.m. He was armed with an AR-15. His other buddy was armed with an AR-15. And then I think one of them might have taken a 30-06, which is, all plenty capable weapons to kill a coyote. And they were using either the red or green lights to keep the coyotes from recognizing their, a normal light deer and coyotes will see and they'll run from. Just so happened they had his dad had an old horse trailer sitting up at the edge of the field. It had probably been 60 yards away from where they had the deer tied up hanging out of the tree. And they got up on top of that horse trailer, and it gave them a perfect vantage point of them overlooking the field and the cemetery. And the way he explained it, he said, we let things settle down and get quiet. Then we started periodically using the caller, and they were using the, I think the fawn and the rabbit in distress. And he said, Dad, it's hard to explain. He said, but after about an hour, he said, like things changed, like the atmosphere, I guess. And he said, we would hear whistles. He said, almost as if a human being, like he said, like a whistle, someone would whistle to try to get someone else's attention. He said, we may hear one to our left, and then we might hear one to our right. And he said, then it went from where, and this is exactly how he explained this. He said, it sounded like people cracking their knuckles. He said, it would sound, he said, the only way I can describe it, we would hear like people cracking their knuckles around us. And he said, it was kind of spooking us, but 3 of us, we were armed. And he said, this went on until about 2 a.m. And he said, no coyotes came in. We didn't see any coyotes. He said, so at that time, we decided, because we kept hearing the whistling and the knuckle cracking, as he explained it, he said, we were a little bit weirded out by it, but we got kind of bored because it had been so many hours we hadn't seen anything. We decided to call it a night. We were going to go home. Now, what they did, they'd driven an old side-by-side up the logging road, and they'd got up to the top, and I think about 200 yards or so from the horse trailer, they'd parked the side-by-side, and they walked in on foot. And he told me, he said, we didn't have flashlights. We just had those lights with the red lens on. So he said, we're coming down out of this field. And they had to walk down out of the field, and they would switch back hard to their left down this logging road to go to the side-by-side. He said, right as we walked to the edge of the field and commenced to switch back to the left, he said something was about, the way he described it, 30 or 40 feet away from them. And it was just right over the embankment. And he said, Dad, it had to have been stalking up on us to try to stay downwind of us. He said, but this thing let out such a loud roar. He said that it stunned all three of them. He said it was so loud that it just vibrated their insides. He said they couldn't even go into detail about it. He said it just totally horrified us. And he said it was right over the hill. He said we thought we saw something, but we didn't see anything because it's 2 a.m. And I said, well, here they're armed. So I said, well, what did you do? He said, we panicked. He said, and we took off just blindly running down the logging road. And I said, well, son, you were armed. He said, Dad, you don't understand. We were scared to death. He said, we just completely panicked. He said, we've been to the zoos. And he said, Dad, you know how the African lion roared when we were 20 feet away from us? Yeah. He said, it was 3 times as loud as that and deeper. He said, he said it was unworldly. And one of the young men became so afraid, I guess he peed all over himself, peed down his pants and all that, which was apparently very embarrassing to him. And they managed to get to the side-by-side. And he said how we didn't wreck. And when you wreck on these mountains here, you wreck for days. That's what I say. If you go over the mountain, you keep rolling for 200-300 yards. Yeah. And he said, Dad, I don't. He said there was times when the passenger side wheel was going off the road over the. He said I don't know how we wrecked. And so they came back, and he woke me up and told me about it. He was completely shocked, scared to death. And a few days later, well, okay, I'll back up. His buddies told their dad, and he's old-fashioned, and he came to the conclusion that it was demons. He said, it's demons. It's got to be demons. Now, of course, that's, typically a lot of people who live in the country, that's their answer for a lot of things. It's demons, it's evil spirits or whatever. And of course, I was talking to the boys. I said, fellas, typically a demon don't want to live in the woods by itself. It's a demon it's a spirit that wants to possess a body. This was something that was stalking you. And when I went back to the scene where they had the deer and where they're positioned, my theory is this: the way they had the collar set up near the deer, and they were 60 yards to the right of the deer on the edge of the field. This thing was would have been coming in straight up toward them, and the wind was blowing. So they just by chance were up high enough. I think the wind blew their scent away. And this thing was hearing the deer in distress and the rabbit in distress, and it was trying to come up and circle around to get downwind of the injured prey to hunt it. And when they left their stand and come out of that field, I think they crossed paths with it, maybe startled whatever it was. But it was big enough that my son said it was an otherworldly roar that he heard. And one of the boys used the bathroom on himself. Now, if you can imagine, from where I had the encounter for my first time, just right across the mountain, just right here, literally 60 yards from here, as the crow flies, we're only 400 yards from what happened to them there. Now, I will say this, those boys used to camp back in their tent camp quite often. They've never went back. They said, we'll never do that. No way. And I went back and I looked at, like I say, and I found where I think the thing was coming in downwind of them, and they probably ruined its hunt, whatever it was. Whether there's a lot of characteristics like what they say a dog man is, but also the whistling and all that's consistent with what you would say a Sasquatch was. And where they did not get a visual on it, it's hard to say. But when I went back, I found several trees that had been snapped and broken, and a lot of, and of course, I showed them to the boys, and I said, guys, you just need to be careful if you're up here. They said, oh, we're never coming back here. Well, we're not. We'll never camp out here again. So that was my son's story, and if he was here, I would let him explain the depth of what he heard. It scared him, and they made it a pact. They don't go back there anymore, more or less. Now, moving from there, from where I live here in this little hollow, if you drive out to the main road and take a left, you'll go about 2 miles. There's another place that's called Greenbrier Hollow. And these people were having a 4th of July party for one of their sons who was active military, and he was coming in on leave. And they were apparently cooking out, playing live music like banjo, guitar. A lot of bluegrass down here. And they had a creature come out of the woods and stood right at the edge of the wood line and looked at all. There was multiple eyewitnesses to this. I'm guessing at least 15 that all saw this. They actually reported it to a man who had told me, and this guy actually is a member with the BFRO. And the reason he told me, I know this guy, and he said, you know Greenbrier? I said, yeah, I just live right up the road. And he told me about this. He said they didn't want, I guess they take reports. If you don't want it public, they'll keep it in their data bank, but they don't make it public. So he said these people were legitimate. They were having a cookout for family member, 4th of July, military. And this thing came right down it was right before dark as the sun was setting. And I guess it showed itself to all of them and probably put a damper on the party. I think it scared them really badly. And again, I thought that was something relevant that I would tell you about. Now, I had a student when I was working at the local high school here. She was a senior. She's now married to a law enforcement officer. But she came into school and got off the bus, and she was she was hysterical. And at that time, the teacher that was her homeroom teacher came to me. I was next door to her. She came to me. She said, I don't know what to do with her. She's hysterical. She's crying. She's freaking out. She says she can't go home or whatever. So I go talk to her. And the reason the teacher came to me, because she knew my background. She thought law enforcement. So as I talked to this girl, she says, Mr. Kennedy, I just saw a Bigfoot. And I said, no, what are you talking about? Now, I'll explain where this occurrence happened. From the school teacher I spoke of the last time, this would have happened within 2 or 3 miles of her house. And from my house, it would probably be 5 or 6 in a straight line. But she said, I'm one of only a handful of students to ride the bus. The name of this area is Coon Branch Hollow Mountain, or it's Coon Branch Mountain and Coon Branch Hollow. She lives up on top of the mountain. And she said, I got on the bus this morning. Well, after I finally got her to talk, she was crying. She was hysterical. She was convinced if she went back up on the hill, she was going to be killed with this thing. She said there was only 2 kids on the bus, and they were both sleeping. She said they both had their heads down sleeping. She said, as the bus was taking me down off the mountain, she said, I was awake and I looked over to my left. She said, there's an old abandoned single wide trailer. And she said, I saw something move. And she said, and when I first looked, I thought my eyes were playing tricks. But she explained, she said, but it took another step. And she said, this thing was massive. and it was on two legs. And she said its head was higher than the roof of the trailer. Now, I wasn't there, but if you could have seen her, how she was acting as if it was happening at the time. She was crying. She looked, her hair was messed up. She was hysterical. And my primary thing was I kept talking to her. I didn't tell her what I said, well, that her biggest concern was, I don't want to go back up there. I live up there. I'm scared to death now. So I got her calmed down, and I finally talked her down, and I said, listen, by this evening, whatever it was will be gone, and you'll probably never see it again, and so forth and so on. So as a few days went by, she calmed back down. But I'd failed to mention that the last time we talked, because we had a student, most likely saw the same one that the teacher had seen, because it was during that same time frame. And from where my house sits here, if you drive straight up the hollow, the road eventually goes up, you hit dirt, and you come out on top of Coon Branch Mountain. So it's all interconnected. And the more we talk about this, the more we find out that everybody has been seeing things. And that kind of brings me to my next person. He's a distant family member, and he's a preacher. And he had kind of made a few jabs at me in the past about my encounter, because he didn't believe me. He thought, no, I've lived here. He's older than me. I've lived here longer than him. I've not seen anything. So I was just like, well, don't ever believe, don't be shocked. Well, he completely discounted it. I could just tell by his body language, and that was fine. Fast forward about a year, and last summer he flags me down, because again, we live in a very rural area. I could literally stop in the middle of the road and talk to somebody for an hour, and maybe not another car come through. So it's so he was down at his place. He has a pond with fish, and it's surrounded by pine trees. He flags me down, and we're talking, and I could tell he's wanting to talk about something more so, because that was odd for him to flag me down. I said, well, man, what's going on? He said, that thing that you said you seen? Yeah. He goes, well, I think I might have had a run in with it too. I said, you don't say. He said, well, yeah. He said, it's got me kind of spooked. I said, well, what happened? He said, well, the other night I was laying in the bed in there. He said, and it's cool in my house, so I just raise my window and leave the screens at night to let just cool air come in. He said, and something woke me up at about, I might get the times wrong, 1 or 2 o'clock, I think it was. He said, something woke me up, and he said, I thought that I could hear movement outside of my house near my garage. And he has a detached garage. He said, so I laid there and I listened for a while, and I didn't hear anything else. He said, so then I gradually went back to sleep. He said, I don't know how long I slept, but probably around 2:30 or so a.m., I was awakened again. He said, and this time I definitely heard something out by my garage. Now, like most pieces of land around here, if you have any flat land at all, it butts right up to steep mountains. So his garage is right up next to a steep mountain on some flat land. And he was convinced someone was trying to get in his building. So he said, man, I got up and I decided just to walk outside to see what I could see. And he said, I got out of bed, and they have a dusk to dawn light there. And I never bothered to ask him if he was armed. I'm assuming he wasn't, or he would have told me. He said, but I creeped out through the front door of my kitchen, and I went around and I was looking. And he said, I didn't see anything around the side of my house. He said, so I went to my garage, and his garage probably sits about 20 feet to the left of his house. He said, when I got near the front of it, he said, man, the only thing I can describe, he said, there were 2 or 3 trees, and he said they were about that round. And he said, and something started shaking those trees so violently right on the edge of the mountain there. He said, and it started making sounds like a gorilla. He said, just like a gorilla you hear on National Geographic or something. He said, it was making those sounds like I'd agitated, and it was shaking those trees like crazy. And I said, what did you do? He said, man, I went and got back in the house. He said, it just completely freaked me out. He said, I'm starting to think now that I might have had the encounter with what you saw. Now, from where I live to where he lives, when I had my first encounter and it walked from the left to the right, if it would have continued walking, it would have ended up at his house. He's about a quarter to a half mile away. If that, probably a little over a quarter mile away is where he lives from me. So that kind of validated a few things. I had a friend who happens to be a sheriff's deputy stop in the house one night. And he and I was talking. And this happened at Coalwood. Coalwood is famous for the Rocket Boys. October Skies, the movie, the Rocket Boys, and that's here in our county. That's one of our claim to fame here. He was up there responding to a call one night, and he said, man, the strangest thing happened. Now, he first tells me this story, then I told him what I thought he saw. He said, I was driving along about 20 miles an hour. He said, and a monkey walked right out in front of my cruiser. He said, and there was another officer following me in his cruiser. He said, so I stopped. I was going to run it over. He said, I stopped dead in the road. And this thing literally walked right in front of me. And he said, I'm sitting and looking at this. He said, it was about 3 foot tall. He said, it was bigger than a monkey, but the only thing I could process was monkey. He said, but when it crossed by my lights, he said, it didn't have a tail. And he said, it walked to the guardrail. And rather than jump the guardrail, he said, it acted like a kid. It got up and it stood on the guardrail and it turned and looked at him. And he said, man, I drove within 10 feet of this and shined a spotlight in its eyes. He said, it was on the left side of the road. I was in the right lane. And he said, I sat and I looked at this thing and it just looked at me. And he said, then it turned, it jumped down off the guardrail and run over the hill. And he said, this was seen by me and the guy following me. And I told him, I said, you most likely saw like a juvenile Sasquatch or one that's close to being a baby or whatever. And he said, you think? I said, well, do you know of any monkeys that don't have tails? And I said, there's been plenty of reports of that up through there. I don't know if you're familiar where Mullins, West Virginia is. Now, Mullins from here is it's about a 45-minute drive, but it's very rural. A teacher came home from work. And she was driving up her driveway, and it was during fall of the year, and it was still daylight, but she had her headlights turned on. And as she made a right turn into her driveway, her headlights sweep across the edge of the woods, and she sees again, she describes a chimp or a monkey. And it's behind a tree peeking at her. So she stops, and as she stops, the thing stays there. And it has its head tucked as if it's scared. She's like this. It's got its hands around the tree. So she puts her vehicle in park and walks up to the tree where this thing is. And according to what she told this man, she said she started talking to it like a baby because she was convinced that somebody's pet chimp or pet monkey or whatever had probably gotten loose and was lost and scared. And she said that as she was talking to it and talking to it like a baby or a puppy or whatever, it actually, she could tell it calmed down, and then it raised its head up from where it was hiding its face and looked at her. And according to the woman, when it looked at her, its eyes were blood red. They glowed blood red. And apparently, now, for some reason, I'm thinking that she said it may have had small canines, but I don't want to quote that as exact, but I guess she jumped back startled when she saw this. And when she jumped back startled and made it like a startled sound, apparently this thing made some weird sound. And it turned, and she explained that it ran up the mountain. She said it ran faster than anything humanly possible could ever run on 2 legs. And this woman worked for Wyoming East High School as a teacher. So we had another occurrence that happened here. Now, I don't know if you actually got the pictures that I sent you prior that look like this here. You may or may not have them. And if you did, it's been so long, you might have lost them.
No, I'll go back and look while
Well,
you're.
yeah. I actually, what I did is I have a Google Earth map, and I'll go in if something significant happens. I'll put a little marker. This happened here. This happened here. This happened here, and they're just right down the road about 100.
Was it a Google Earth map picture?
Yes.
Okay, no, I don't have that.
Okay. I'd actually found a tree structure on our property before I knew what tree. I had no idea what I was looking at. I was out walking our property right after I'd moved back here. And this place, I've bow hunted down here my whole life, up until college. I went away. My job kept me from coming back. So there was a pause. And then when I moved back here, I mean, this is bow hunter's paradise because there's no rifle season. And I was just scouting some of my property for deer sign. And right off these gas wells, these deer love to work these gas wells, and they'll branch out here and there. I found what I thought at the time, and again, it might have been, but I found a perfect, it was about 8 foot tall. It had an opening to the front, and it was made sort of like a teepee, but it was made all out of broken tree branches. And it was right off of a deer trail. And I even came back and I told my wife, I said, I found like a tree teepee. And she said, huh, what do you think? I said, I don't know. I said, it's maybe somebody's been ground blind, made a ground blind out of it. It's been hunting off the gas well. But I thought that would be kind of odd to have it there, possibly could have been one of those tree structures that they talk about. And I don't know much about those, but right across the road from that is where I managed to get the tracks that went all the way up the gas well of 18-inch prints, and the very, very big prints. My wife and my son witnessed, and they saw these. That's the one I was saying I had the memory card of, that I actually have pictures of the tracks. And I sent you a picture of a guy's boot next to a track. I don't know if you remember that. My neighbor, the same one who, he's now married, the one who was with my son and peed himself. Okay. He told me, he said, man, I had something out moving around my house last night. And he said, I was concerned that they own heavy equipment, concerned with somebody's messing with my equipment. He said, so I went out before daylight with a gun and was walking around. And he said it was semi-frosted. It had frosted by right before the sun came up. He said, I found a couple tracks that where the soil had kind of settled and there was water standing in it. The impression stayed and it froze. And he took a good picture of one of the tracks. That's the one I have. This one, it looks like there's a guy wearing a boot. Only thing you see is the boot and a track in grass right next to it. And
I don't see that one.
I tell you when I would have seen it, this would have been when we're going to do this, and then we canceled because I got sick. I'd sent you those files that week. I can send them to you. You can use them at a later date. But
sure,
this boy wears a size 15 boot. So I've never measured shoes outside edge to outside edge. Like if you wear a size 12, I don't know what the outside I would imagine if you wear a size 12, it would be at least 13, I would think. Yeah. But the track is bigger than his boot. So whatever made the tracks was big, and it was walking on 2 feet. That happened about 80 yards from me to the left. And that was just him being aware of him thinking something's going on around here. So he actually took pictures of it for me. And I have those saved on a disc. Now, I was looking through all of my journal notes, and I made note to just go through and talk about some of these things because I would be here all night if I actually did that. Now, you tell me when to stop, or you tell me if you got questions or anything, we can do that, because these things, I hate to say, when I write stuff down, I write it down kind of, it's dry because of how I would write for criminal investigative reports. I can summarize these things just to give people an idea, and most of these I would just skip because it's repetitive stuff. Roars, whistles, knocks, things like that. And they happen all around the house.
I can throw it out there real quick. If anybody has any questions from what they've heard so far for George, write them in all caps, and George will answer them the best he can. And it looks like Miss Wendy's back on here. She's on here. Hey, Miss Wendy Day, how you doing? Good seeing you. Got off that boat, I see. Probably should get back on that boat. Spend as much time on the boat as you can.
Mm-hmm.
We'll give everybody a couple minutes to see if there's any. You earlier you brought up, and I can't believe I remember this because my memory is just
right.
I don't have one. Earlier you were talking about one of your friends who had a sighting, and you don't remember if he was armed or not, and he didn't say if he was or not.
Yeah.
I have taken quite a few reports and talked to many people, and have heard hundreds of reports of people out actually with rifles in their hands seeing these things, and forgot that they had rifles in their hands.
Hey, when I first had the encounter, that was me. When I first had my eyewitness account, I'm heavily armed. It never crossed my mind, and when it did, a pistol would not have hurt it. A pistol wouldn't have hurt it. So I get that. I could have walked in the house and got something to record it with. Never crossed my mind. I was just in total shock.
Right. You're processing, you're in overload.
Yeah.
I mean, even researchers that go out that are looking for them, when you think you're ready, you still have to process what's happening. When I'm driving through and going to my research areas, there's so many times that I'm sure I see something.
Yeah.
But as soon as you back up, what you thought you see isn't there. And it's just, you got to process. And when you're on high alert, it almost seems like your processing isn't as up to your alert level.
Yeah,
if
exactly.
That makes any sense.
I think it's human. Well, it's typically human nature too. You always will lump things into known categories. So if you see something and maybe you think it's something, you can immediately switch gears and justify that it was something else.
Yeah.
And one of the things I learned when you interview eyewitnesses, people will say eyewitnesses are very unreliable, but that's not true. We discovered that it's how a person processes information is how they will recall it. So, for instance, if there's an armed robbery of a gas station and there's witnesses to the crime and it happens quickly, if I interview a guy who's military, I interview a young girl who's into fashion, they interview just a normal guy. Maybe he's some guy he's a high school boy who works out and whatnot. So if they're all three a witness to it, I may get from the military guy certain characteristics of, his fitness level, if he looked like he was dressed appropriately, or if he was shaggy or whatever. The female may see things about a certain brand of clothing or jewelry, and they may overlook the most basic of things. Whereas this high school guy who's aware of working out, he may see, man, this guy was, he was about 6 foot tall and he looks like he worked out and he had short hair. You take all three of those and you put them together and you have a perfect description of what you're looking for.
Yeah.
In and of themselves, you would think, well, they saw three different people. But a lot of times it's how you process things, and it's what you're accustomed to doing. And I figured that out years ago when I would be out at a crime scene interviewing witnesses, because we would always interview them separately and not allow them to speak to each other, so they could not inadvertently coach or condition the other person to say something a certain way. And I would build really good cases. I have seen 3 total, 1 possibly. I saw my first encounter was arguably, you could say, probably 10 minutes. The second encounter was I'd have to look at my dates. I had one up on my hunting lease when I was cutting logs, and I called him a shadow man because he was a black figure and he was watching me. And then I had one in my backyard. That's one of the things I failed to tell you about the one I had in my backyard. The one that I had the sketch of the last time had his back turned to me. Um, we were leaving, going to. That's 3 on my property. Okay, I've had 2 more that I got FLIR video of elsewhere, and one of them was here in West Virginia. The other one was in Ohio. The one in Ohio, a woman was having a problem on her property, and they asked us to go take a look. Now, when I say they asked someone who had a reputation, and this guy knew me and knew that I was an investigator. So he asked me, and I said, "Hey, if you'll let if my wife and daughter go with me as a bucket list thing, because let's get real. You never expect to go get video of a Bigfoot when somebody asks you to go look for Bigfoot for them.
Yeah.
You know, it was one of those things where I thought this would be the first night I got footage, 2.5 minutes of it. So that's 5, 3 here on my property, 2 elsewhere. And the night that I had the one in my backyard, and when I took the boy home from lifting weights with my son, we were actually planning on going on a vacation the next morning. And that's why it's obvious that these things pattern us. They pattern your daily routine. Mm-hmm. And we are all creatures of habit. And it's when you break that routine, it's when things happen out of the norm. That's when you'll see something or hear something. That's always been my experience. And that took me going through that multiple times to figure out they pattern us. And when I inadvertently break my pattern for whatever reason, that's when things tend to happen. And I think they get in a certain routine of knowing what you do and when you do it. And they pattern you. And then when you deviate, that's when they will do things that you recognize, wood knocks, whistles, things like that. But the night that I drove up on the one in my backyard, we were leaving the next morning to go to the beach for a few days. I'm not a beach guy, and my wife had been on me forever to go to the beach. So I said, okay, we'll go. So that's how our schedule was knocked off. We were here late. I didn't take the boy home till, I guess, around 11 o'clock or midnight. When I came back, that's when I saw it in the backyard, and it ran. Well, we leave the next morning. When we come back, right at the edge of my yard, up on the hillside, there's a tree that had been broken about 7 foot up. It had been snapped, and the tree was pointing right down perfectly toward my front porch. Now, of course, you can go, well, trees break all the time. But this tree was perfectly healthy. It was about that round in diameter. It was a big tree. It still had green leaves and foliage. And it was one of the first trees along the outer edge of the tree line that butted up to grass. And the tree was broken, and it was coming into the grass, pointing toward my house. So there's no way naturally could that have happened. There's just no way. If wind would have been coming down off the mountain strong enough to break trees, there would have been a path of destruction behind this one tree. If wind would have come up out of the hollow into the wood line, it would have fell opposite and went into the trees. This thing was deliberate, almost. I don't know what it means, but straight up, the tree breaks, there is something to them. And that to me was on the very day we got back. It was so noticeable. I saw that tree. And as a matter of fact, I eventually cut the tree down because it was broken, laying where I weed eat. And the stump is still up there on the edge of the hillside. I think that thing was kind of sending a message to me like, yeah, I know you saw me. And I don't know, but that was kind of my impression I got with it. But if you would like for me to, I could start reading through some of these that I just marked that I think are a little interesting or different. And then if you want me to expound on them, I can, because some of my writing's dry. Yeah, I take. Okay,
sure.
I'll probably be jumping from date to date because I had them in order, but I would see something. Yeah, I could talk about that, and I would highlight it. So, okay, yeah,
I tend to agree with you about the tree structures. I think they mean something.
Yeah,
and I bet you, and I just know, George, if we knew what they meant, man, that would open up a door for us. Like, I mean, if we didn't find anything else out other than what the meaning of the tree structures were, that would open up a huge door for research. So much.
You know, I'm sure you've heard of tree twists.
Yep, I've got them in my area.
Well, yeah, here too. Now I found tree twists here, and of course we have a lot of black bears here. Bears will break trees over, and it's distinct. You can tell but a twist is very unique.
Mm-hmm.
It's you have to have hands to do it. A bear couldn't do it because of claws, and it's just literally you're twisting something so strong that you're twisting the tree in half, and it just tears, and then it's laid over. I found tree twists right across the road here up on the ridge. And to put in perspective, the first eyewitness account I had when I thought that I heard what sounded like a mountain lion or a woman screaming or something up on the ridge, it was in that area. Now, I didn't find these till several years later. I was just out scouting my property, looking around, and I found them. And by that time, I kind of had a good idea of what it was. Had I seen those years prior, I would have not known. I would have thought, well, that's odd, because you can't do that. A person can't do that with their hands. Okay. April of 2020, a friend of mine, he's a retired captain with the West Virginia State Police. They were down here, and his mother had came down. We were going to have a campfire and cookout and whatnot. And during that night, she claims that she heard wood knocks. And she said she stayed in our camper, and she heard multiple knocks throughout the night, and it scared her. Because she was concerned, she asked if we were in the woods beating on trees. And I said, no, that's always joke and say that's our friends from the forest here. They'll mess with you. May of 2020. Again, friend comes down to stay in the camper. They report the following morning that someone had knocked, he said, either on the side of the camper or on the camper door late at night. He said he got up and immediately answered the door, and no one was there. He said, I looked both ways, man, and it was impossible that someone could have hidden that quickly. And I don't know how to explain that. Because, he was like, man, I know it couldn't have been you guys playing a prank. And I said, I wouldn't do that because I know he's armed. He would never shoot me, but I said, no, there's no way anyone could knock on the door. And from where the bed is to the side door is only about 6 feet. It's a camper. Could they hide unless they just crawled and got under the camper? And I said, did you think to look under the camper? He said, no, I didn't, And then he asked me, he says, man, do you think it's, he said, you think it's some crackhead or something? I said, dude, there's no crackheads around here. We don't have that here, and I said, no, there's nobody that would ever, the few people who live around here are decent people and they wouldn't mess with it. July 2020, my wife, son, and me, we hear a very loud and distinct roar. From the area we typically hear vocalizations. Now, I would have written this down, and I'm referring to, it's back in the hollow here, back in behind the house. It's where we hear vocalizations quite often. Later that night, my wife was in the bed. I'm sitting in the living room. I hear a loud shriek outside. I think it is my son maybe playing a video game upstairs, because, again, you try to put it in a category. I'm thinking, okay, I thought I heard a shriek, but then I'm thinking, I bet they're sneaking and staying up playing video games. My wife she awake, and she comes out of the bedroom and says, did you hear that person screaming? And so I'm like, I heard something. Maybe they're sneaking and playing video games. I go upstairs, they're in a bed asleep. So that was something that I had written down for that night. And, I'm going to be jumping date to date here. Okay, this happened October of 2023. I fell asleep on the couch. My wife and daughter had gone to Beckley, and they were shopping. I stayed home. My son had come home from college, and he had went with them. I woke up. I was just kind of hanging out, reading a Kindle book. After a few minutes, I ended up falling back asleep. I was abruptly awakened by what sounded like rustling and banging either on the house or inside of the house. I was uncertain how long I'd been asleep, and I thought it may have been my family coming in from their trip from Beckley. After a few moments, I realized that no one was home, so I assumed maybe it was my imagination. Again, I felt very tired. I dozed back off. Then I heard a voice. I'm going to imitate this voice, man, because this was spooky. It said, George, like that. Okay. Like someone was trying to scare me or startle me. So in my notes, I said, it sounded, it was saying my name in a very deep animalistic voice. So I assumed it was my son. But then I quickly realized they were not home. I proceeded to listen for a while longer and stay awake. I didn't hear anything else. I fell asleep. Later that night, my wife and family come home. I did not even tell them about my experience. The following morning, my wife proceeded to tell me that after she had gone to bed and she had fallen into a deep sleep, she thought she was having a dream of something beating loudly on the side of the house. She said she thought that the dream was so vivid and real and loud that she was awakened only to continue to hear the loud banging on the side of the house. She said that the banging sounded as if someone was trying to get our attention. I did not hear the banging because I was asleep. I asked my wife why she didn't wake me, and she said she didn't know why. She said she was too scared to move or to speak or to even wake me up. That was an account that happened. I'll jump here again. These are jumbled with the times. This is Wednesday, November the 9th, 2022. Happened at 5:15 p.m. Myself and my son were up on my hunting lease near here. I was on the same ridge where I had the encounter with the shadow man, as I call him, as he was watching me cut logs. We were working on one of our trail cameras when we heard a loud, long, drawn-out howl coming from across the ridge at Coon Branch. We both looked at each other and said, "Did you hear that?" A minute or so later, we heard the howl again. A few seconds, the same howl as before answered it. We were able to catch this howl on audio, which you've had. We continued to record, and within a few minutes, we heard two more howls. Things were quiet for about 3 minutes or so. We quit recording. Suddenly, we heard another howl from the same area. Then we heard a loud whistle coming from down the hill below the area where the howl took place. That seemed to be about a half mile past the first area. We continued to listen. We hear two knocks and a tree break. What it sounded like, honestly, this has happened to me twice. I'll tell you the next story. I was by myself.
George?
Yes.
Do you remember what the howl was labeled? If I have it on here, I can. Was it Peach Mountain, Whistle Rock, EDI, Bridge, Ellis?
Man, I'm not. I tell you, it's
number 7 says hidden.
I had sent it to you when we were first going to do the second time around, and it was it just looks like an audio file with an arrow on it. And I had a guy by the name of Mike Hartman who's a big time in audio. He had cleaned one up to where you could hear the howls. Mm-hmm. And there's another longer one he's still working on for me. And I don't know if I called it anything other than howl or audio vocalization or something. I don't know. And I sent that at the same time where I had the picture of the track with the guy's foot next to it. And I had sent an overhead Google Earth map of my location with all this stuff. Okay. The thing is, I'm not tech savvy enough to be able to resend it up. I could forward that audio to you because I sent it to you in Messenger. It's when I sent it, is how I sent it. You know what? While I'm here, let me see if I can get on my phone and just resend this to you. I know we need to move on, man.
I just wanted to see if I had it, because we're talking about it. It makes an experience really stand out when you've got what you heard to share.
I hate it's so much easier for me to work on to do this with my cell phone. Okay. Yeah. That's okay. Here we go. Let me send these back to you here. See if you can get them. Oh, come on. How do you spell your last name?
Barr. Jimmie.
Okay.
BARR.
Let me see if it's going to send. Now it's saying that the picture's sent to you.
Okay.
Let me go up here to the video. Let me see. Hopefully you can open those.
Yeah, I got the pictures. I think I have those still.
Okay, now those, here's the picture of the guy with his foot. Oh, those are different pictures there. They should be.
I got the looks like 3 thermals and the one that maybe in the frost. Yeah, I see
Uh,
the
the
guy
one-
with the foot.
The one in the frost is that's the one where the guy was comparing his foot. He wears a size 15.
Yeah.
And the one audio file is I think it's 14 seconds long if I can find it.
I don't know how well this will work on camera.
It's what it is. It's now you can see it like that. You can see that that's the guy either wears a size 15 or 16 shoe, and you can see the naked footprint next to it is arguably a little bit longer or at least as long.
Yeah.
And that's Sasquatch encounter not okay. Let me see. Hey Chas, I'm gonna see if you could help me send this audio file to him.
Hey George, this is me. Hey, I'm still not feeling great.
This is not it. That's your audio file.
Yeah, that's my audio. That's me telling you I feel like terrible.
Yep. Okay, this is a picture of the back of my house where the tree was knocked over. And that I'm going to try one more time to find that audio file. If I can't, then it is what it is, you know.
Yeah.
Do you know how to break it down?
I think so.
Okay, while she's looking, I'll go into this one here.
Right on, do your thing.
Okay. All right. The recordings we got, I've tried to send them to you. Hopefully you got them. Now, there was an occasion when my wife is letting me look at the audio files here. It's not there. I was up on my lease cutting trees, and this startled me so bad, it spooked me so much that I came home. I actually called my wife and said, man, I'm thinking I'm going to be attacked by something here. And here's what I think happened after this one occasion I'm getting ready to talk about. And then I look at the occasion when my son and I had all of these vocalizations, the whistles, the knocks, and whatnot. I think they hunt, and I think what they do, they will herd. I think what they'll do, they will get on different locations and they'll move toward a general location,
Funnel
and funnel something. Now, how do I send that to him? Because there's not a way to send it.
Who am I sending it?
BARR. We might be able to get you the audio, one of them. But I was cutting some trees to make the road wide enough to drive a side-by-side through. I took a break. And as I took the break, I heard, the best way I can describe it, it would be behind me and slightly to my right shoulder. It sounded like about 150 yards away. I heard several knocks that I first thought were gunshots. Pow, 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 like that. And I thought, is that gunshots down in the hollow here? And you know, very well could have been, but it had more of a wood knock sound rather than a pistol sound.
Yeah.
So I listened for a little bit longer, and I'm thinking, probably somebody target shooting or whatever. To my left, slightly behind me, I hear a whop. I thought, okay. So I heard multiple knocks down and to my right. Then I hear a knock to my left over the hill. At that point in time, I'm kind of on alert. So I decided to stop using the chainsaw, and I'm going to use a brush whacker that you just use the handles on it.
Yeah.
I'm doing that. And after a few minutes, I guess you say you kind of get comfortable with your situation again, because I can hear. I'm not hearing any more knocks. and I'm gradually working my way away from my side by side up in the woods, and I'm working my way on up the logging road. I'm not exaggerating when I tell you this. It sounded like about 60 yards away from me to my right and in front of me, I heard a wood knock. So I have them behind me and to my right over the hill. I have them behind me and to my left slightly over the hill. I just had one about 60, 80 yards away in front of me and to my right. At that point, I felt like I was surrounded by something. And this was one of those times when you get the heebie-jeebie feeling. And listen, that's not me. I don't get scared often. I felt very uncomfortable, and I felt like
vulnerable.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I felt like I need to move. I need to get out of here. So here's what I did. I got in my side by side and I drove up about 400 yards on up the trail to get away from that area. And I thought, okay, I'm far enough away from these things now that know I'm not here to bother them. Maybe they'll leave me alone. I get out and I start, first of all, using my brush choppers. I didn't want to get my chainsaw out right away. And I immediately hear a wood knock again. But what was crazy, I heard one slightly to my left behind me, and I heard one almost directly parallel to me to my left. So I know they had to have moved. I then got on my phone and I messaged my wife. And I said, hey, I honestly think I'm being stalked by these things. I'm surrounded. Now, I've never sent her a message like that out of the blue. I said, I'm surrounded by these things. I believe I'm going to have to leave. Now, I tell her this in case I don't come home. They know where to come looking for me. Now, this is what put the final nail in the coffin for me. I go and I back my four-wheeler up, my side-by-side, I'm sorry. I've got a nice side-by-side, full glass enclosure. It's got heat and water, like a little car or truck.
Yeah.
I come down off the mountain and I drive down into the hollow, and there's a gate. I get out, I open the gate. I drive through the gate and I turn my side-by-side off to go close the gate. And as soon as I close the gate and I go walking back toward the side-by-side to get in it, right up on the hill to my left, one knocked. And it was almost as if letting the others know, okay, he's leaving. It's safe to get back to whatever we were doing. And that day, when I left there, I felt really spooked. I felt like maybe, I don't know, man. I kind of felt like maybe they're hunting me. I don't know, But then when that happened to my son and I just last fall, it was kind of the same scenario. I had one, we had whistles, we had a tree break, we had several howls. And I kind of felt like maybe we interrupted one of their hunts. That's what, because the one with my son and I, they seemed like they were agitated, like we were there. The one with me, they seemed like they were just warning each other. Here's where he's at. Here's where he's at. Here's where I'm at in relation to him. They were knocking, and it would be no different if me and you and someone else was like, okay, we don't have walkie-talkies. We can't be screaming at each other and hollering, trying to haul through woods. So here's what I'll do. Whenever I see something, I will knock. Okay. And you'll know as soon as I knock. Okay. And then if I get a look at him, I'll knock to let you know. So it was kind of that type of communication. And that had happened to me. That's happened to me twice up in there. This one time, that was October of 2023. Now here's another occasion. And again, this is my daughter. She claims that something struck the side of the house next to her room. It then raked all the way down the side of the house from one end to the other. She said it sounded as if it took something and threw it up against the house so large that the house shook. She said that she heard breathing really deep and loud during the encounter. We have a dog named Bandit at the time who lived in our backyard. And she said he was growling and barking, going crazy. She said, but then suddenly she heard Bandit whimper. And I said, I recall last night between 2 and 3 a.m. that I clearly heard Bandit barking in agitation. His growl bark seemed to be scared and apprehensive. He started barking in the backyard, and they proceeded to go into the front yard. He has never barked this aggressive and agitated in the past. My daughter said she didn't tell us of what she heard because she didn't want to get up and walk down the stairs to our location because she was scared. So that could explain what, from her thing. And I have another one. My daughter Grace, this is happened in December. She's outside preparing to board the morning school bus at approximately 7:45 a.m. My wife Chastity's on the front porch watching and talking to her before the bus arrives. There's several deer bedding down in our front yard, which that's kind of weird in and of itself.
Yeah.
The deer jump up and start staring across the road into the woods and snorting. My wife is shocked, but she doesn't see anything. The deer bolt, then run toward the hillside behind our house. My wife and daughters then hear what they describe as a loud roar that ended in a growl. She said it first sounded like a vehicle without a muffler starting up in the woods and revving its engine. But there's no way a vehicle could be up in the hills of the mountainside across the road from our property. There's no way. And she said the loud mechanical sound tapered off to a growl. Then she said she heard something running and moving through the woods, tearing up the trees and underbrush like a huge runaway vehicle. And then we fast forward. It's 11 days later. Let me see. I may have already talked about this one. Being up on the lease where the shadow man happened. I'm hearing more knocks again to a point where I come and I write it down. And at 1 a.m., my daughter messages my wife from upstairs in her bedroom and said that she was scared because she thought she heard a man scream out from behind our house. I asked my wife exactly what she heard. During the conversation, my daughter messaged, "It just did it again." According to my daughter, the sound was like a really big man yelling out, but it was too big to be a man's voice. It sounded like he was in pain, but much deeper and much, much louder. I got up, got dressed, got a flashlight, and got a pistol. I went outside, walked the property at home, but I didn't see anything or I didn't hear anything further. Then we fast forward down here to just a few days later. I'm awakened by what I think is a loud bang to the backside area of the house. I'm very tired, so I convince myself I'm imagining things, and I quickly go back to bed. I need to add, we get up typically at 5:15 in the mornings because to go to work. So typically, hey, if I saw a fire, I'd probably try to justify it some nights. I go back to sleep. 10 minutes later, I'm awakened by my dogs barking, going crazy from inside their kennel in their little room in there. I think I hear a slap, but the dogs are barking so crazy that it's hard to hear anything over them. Finally, the dogs become quiet, and I don't hear any other sounds, so I go back to sleep. At approximately 2:30 hours, my daughter enters my bedroom, and she wakes me up. She's scared, and she says, "Daddy, wake up. Someone is trying to break in our house or tear our house down." I then say, "Well, what's going on, Grace?" She says, "Daddy, something is beating on the side of the house, and it sounds like the walls are going to be knocked down. I'm scared." I then tell her to be quiet so I can listen. Oh, man, I've got my pages backwards here. Let me see. Okay, that's number 4. Here we go. I get up and get a gun, and I walk around the inside of the house. I don't hear any further sounds, and the dogs seem to calm down, and the dogs go back to sleep. But the following morning, the dogs refused to go outside through our back door, and they acted horribly scared. For nearly 2 weeks, the dogs would not cross the threshold to the back door and go outside off the back porch. Here's something else that's weird, man. During one of these times that our dogs refused to go outside through our back door, something had urinated all along the steps and wall of the house. As if, now, dogs would do that to mark its territory. Mm-hmm. But a dog don't have kidneys that big. And I believe that's why I took water, I took car wash detergent, and I scrubbed on that to try to get the sin away. After about 2 weeks, the dogs finally chilled out enough to where they would go back through that exit back there. To this day, can't tell you what it was, but I'm skipping a lot of these. Here's another one. Again, my friend and his wife, they're down here on late Saturday. They stay all night, and my son's graduating. So they drop off some gifts. we hang out down by the fire pit, just playing some music, hanging out, roasting weenies. We actually stepped to about 2:30. My wife, me, and my son, we leave and we walk to the house to go to bed. Jacob, he was a boy who lived with us. He had already went to bed a couple hours prior. But the next morning, we get up early. We have some work to do in the yard. My friend's wife informed me that shortly after we had left to go back to our house, that someone, yet again, had knocked on the camper door. She said they assumed it was us knocking. So Doug, the friend, her husband, he got up and checked the door. According to the wife, he looked outside. No one was there. I spoke to Doug later that day, and he said he refused to accept the fact it was anyone other than us playing a prank. Now, he's the guy that also ended up having the log thrown at his head. And that's when he made the comment later, man, I don't have any way to explain this. And for some of the people who didn't listen to the last time I was interviewed, you have to go back and listen to it. It's a long, drawn-out thing. But my buddy was a big time skeptic. He did not believe in Bigfoot. He was like me. If you hunt all the time, you get a false sense of what is and isn't in the woods. He was like that because he and I have hunted our entire life. And he was like, no, man, there's got to be something to it. He said, I got to see it to believe it. Well, he had an encounter while on my property, and he did not see this creature, but it actually vocalized to him. It spoke almost like a language, I guess you would say. And then he mimicked it back to it, and he was looking up on the hillside to try to see what it was. He couldn't see it. And whatever it was threw a stick at his head, and it whizzed right by his ear and landed right in front of him. And there's no trees there. So it was something through the stick. And he said, man, he didn't hunt the next morning. And he said, that should rattle me a little.
Yeah.
I think he kind of come to terms with it then. But that's another story that they would have to go back to where they could kind of make some sense out of it. Let me see this one. Okay, I have written out the account of my neighbor about what had happened to him. There's no reason to rehash that. My daughter and I were away on a basketball road trip. This was recently. This happened last Christmas, and it happened over a 3-night period. So we're away on a basketball trip. My wife messaged me, and she tells me that something was lurking around the house. Our dogs were scared. She said that it was so bad that she felt unsafe. My son claims that he was awakened by a loud wailing sign behind the house up on the hillside. He said that something scraped the side of his bedroom wall from outside too. He even obtained a weapon, came downstairs to check on mom, he said. Later, awakened by the dogs, they were acting terrified. The dogs were barking. Their kennels were shaking and rattling. They were barking so hard. And we could also hear deer in the front yard snorting. So they were being scared by something. The deer here, some of them, it's odd. You can tell whenever coyotes are out hunting, the deer feel safe. Even though I'm a hunter, I don't mess with them here. There's some of the does that will practically walk right up to our porch when we're outside. So a lot of times when there's predators in the area, these deer will kind of congregate in their yard, and they just feel safe here. I made note that the deer actually were in our yard, and that there was something moving around the perimeter of the woods. That was obviously, we couldn't see it. We could hear it. It had the deer on higher alert. It had our dogs going crazy. And then the next night, I'm outside working in my garage, cleaning up the floor. And I hear what sounds, it's a howl. And I described it, said it almost sounded sort of wolf-like coming from the ridge across the house. That's the same place where I had my first encounter. I heard the screams first, and it walked down and presented itself and showed itself to me. I put in here that I attempted to record the howling, but I didn't have any luck. And then That night, I hear what sounds like wood knocks from across the road at the old logging road on the property where I constantly hear them from. So if you can imagine, I'll just hold these up here. I've just been selectively going through. This is front and back typed. I have about 21 pages front and back typed of multiple accounts. And, a lot of them are repetitive to where if I were to read them, it's just the same thing over and over. Knocks, wolves beating on the side of the house. Now, what we did do, this is something I never told you, but last summer, I have the dumpster that I used to have across the road that I was convinced the first Bigfoot that I saw, Sasquatch, I thought it was a massive bear, and I convinced myself it was going to get in the dumpster. I've since then moved that to this side of the road near our yard, and I did that because it's easier to carry the trash there and all. Last summer, I noticed my lid to my dumpster was up. So I went and I took and a bag of trash was out. Now a bear will throw trash everywhere. Now this just happened this past year. Yep, somebody said modus operandi. Absolutely, mode of operation. There you go. That is true. That's when I write stuff down. It's because there's been a pattern developed. If I hear something, if there's a knock, a howl, a screech, and it's the same common theme, I write it down. We have got that horrible skunky smell that comes through sometimes when the dogs go crazy. With this dumpster, I noticed that a bag of trash had been messed with. So that night, I put a cinder block on top of the lid. Okay. Next morning, cinder block's moved, lid's back open. So I put 2 cinder blocks on it. Get up the next morning, both cinder blocks have been moved, and the entire dumpster had been moved about 10 feet toward the road. So I'm thinking maybe a bear, maybe not. I don't know. I bring it back, and I put a multitude of these landscaping blocks on it to where, okay, if it's a 250-pound bear, it's not going to move these. The next morning, I get up, and something had picked up that entire dumpster and carried it all the way across the road up on the hillside. And not one single bag. The bags of trash had been sorted through, but it wasn't strode everywhere. So at that time, okay, either I've got a very big, strong homeless man nobody knows about that lives in the woods who's carried my dumpster off. Nah. Or it's something that I think it is. Here's how I resolved that. I took a trail camera and put it up. I took a trail camera, an infrared one, and set it at my road sign here, right by my dumpster. Never touched it since. It's as if, and if it had been a bear, I'd have got plenty of pictures of a bear messing with the dumpster. Yeah. It was something smart enough to know that's a camera. I don't want to fool with it. And we actually put up a security system all around our house because the stuff don't really scare me anymore. It scares my daughter. It scares my wife when I'm not here. And several people I talked to said, if you put up a surveillance system, they will shy away. And I'll tell you what's crazy. It's true. And it's as if it even knows where there's dead spots. There'll be things happening. But we put up dusted on lighting. I have a dusted on light outside now. And we have a security system here. So mostly what we'll get now are wood knocks and whistles. And it's right off the edge of our yard. It's like they'll watch back and forth. I don't even know if I told you what was going on this just a few months ago, right before the winter turned bad. I got a really nice porch I built on my house, and it sits overlooking my yard, and I got a fire pit out there. And during the cool months, we'll just hang out on the porch. And my daughter, my son, my daughter's boyfriend, me, we all had this happen. And it happened to us at different times. So I tried to pattern them. I have a question. Have any of your pets or livestock been taken? Yes and yes. We had a basset hound turn up missing. Yeah. Well, honestly, he was mean as a snake anyway. You know, I mean, Bigfoot probably regretted that one. We've had
I've never come across an ornery or even a mean basset hound before. Of
this.
course, I never come across a country basset hound. No, so
This one was mean from the time we got him as a pup, and he just got meaner. He wasn't social, and he would, But we had cats been carried. Now, of course, in the country, you can have coyotes will take cats, and if an owl is big enough, and the cat is, that an owl will swoop down and take your cat too.
yeah,
So that was something that we realized could be. Not the dog. There's no way. But my neighbor had chickens, and he kept missing chickens. And I never told him it might be a Bigfoot taking them, because he said, man, I don't know how my roosters are being taken. He said, I'm tying them out. Now, when you tie a rooster out, they have a leather strap that goes around one of their legs, and it goes around a spur too. And then it's attached to a string, and it allows them to feed and peck around, and they can't get to each other and fight.
yeah.
So he said, if you can imagine, when that chicken it pulls that string tight, that makes that leather strap tighter. So it makes there's no way you can get free. He said, man, I've had every rooster taken, and it's as if they've been slipped right out of their leather tie-off strap. And he said they've just been carried off. And I said, huh. Right next door here, we've got some wild grapes growing. And now imagine at one time, some of my family decades ago probably planted them. And they grow straight up. And there was a guy next door near, his name's Pete. He's passed away a year or so ago. But he told me, he said, something is getting the grapes. And I said, yeah. So it could be a bear, a fox, anything. He said, no. Something is getting the grapes that's 9 foot off the ground. And he said, it's not an animal trying to eat them with their mouth. He said, it's something that's plucking the entire pod off. Yeah.
Plucking them off.
So, what do you say to that? I said, well, I don't know, man. Because they would accept the demon was doing it, but they wouldn't accept that a Sasquatch was doing it. So I said, I don't know. I said, it's probably a bear. I left it at that. But what he said was, I'm like, man, there's only one thing it could be at 9 feet off the ground. Yeah. And all of this is happening when I was talking the last time about how I had the property, and my neighbor was walking the property, and you always hear the wood knocks. He was convinced somebody was growing marijuana, and there were lookouts up there. There wasn't. I mean, I kind of keep an eye out for everything, and there's just nobody around here to mess with anything. What I was getting back to with my front porch, I was sitting on the front porch one night, and when you step off the front porch, you either go into the front yard here, or you walk through this door directly behind me. This door leads to my front porch. And typically, if you're outside, you'll get up and you'll walk in the house through this door right behind me. That's our pattern. Well, one late evening, early night, I'm outside reading my Kindle, and I get up, and rather than walk toward this door to go in, I walk toward the front stairs to go down into the yard. And immediately, a wood knock comes from right over there, as if something was watching me and I deviated from the norm. Okay, that same area, that's where I had the first eyewitness account. That's where we got the track line. That's where we had the whoops and the howls and the knocks and all that. So it seems they're active through there. So I made a mental note of that, went in the house. I think I might have told my wife that. The next few times I went outside, I heard nothing. Okay, my daughter, her boyfriend comes over to visit. They're sitting on the front porch. They both come in. They said, Dad, we just heard wood knocks, clear as day. Where at? They pointed to the same place. How many did you hear? We heard 2. And I said, what did it sound like? She said, it was something hitting a tree with a piece of wood. And she said, it freaked us out. And then apparently they had gotten up and walked toward the front of the porch. So I realized then, okay, these things watch us. And whenever we walk back in the house, that's the norm. Or if somebody pulls in the driveway and you walk off the porch, that's normal. But when you walk off the porch without a reason, that breaks our routine. So my son and I are out there, and I'm wanting to test my theory. So we're sitting and we're just talking, hanging out. It's about 9 o'clock at night. And I get just spur. I don't even tell him what I'm doing. So he can testify to any of this. I get up from the couch on our porch and I immediately walk to the front steps. And as soon as I do that, whomp, a loud whack. And my son goes, Dad, did you hear that? I heard it. I said, yeah, I heard it, man. He goes, that had to be a wood knock. That's the only thing that could be. I said, yep, okay. So I started putting apples out over there. I started walking over I was here and I would set out an apple or two and go back the next day, they're gone. Well, okay, could be a deer. I'll start putting them up in trees. Go back the next day, they're gone. Now, I would walk off the front porch, walk down my gravel driveway across to an old logging road, and then it gets flat up in there, and that's where I would set them out. So I developed a pattern, leaving here, going to there, putting out the apple, and coming back. I did that for about 2 weeks straight, and I never deviated. I decided one day to test my theory. I was going to mix it up some just to see if they pattern us. Now, again, this could have been luck, but I got a desired result. I actually attempted to do something, and I got a result out of it. My plan was I was going to go as normal, set these apples out. I had broken branches. And I was putting them out about 7 feet up in a tree, and I would jab them onto the branch. And after I hung the apples, rather than come back down off the hill, I was going to walk up the edge of the embankment because I have a logging road back in there. So I was going to do that and just walk the perimeter of it, something totally different. As soon as I hung the apples, instead of me walking back down the hill, I took a left step and I walked across this little flat. And as soon as my feet hit that mountainside to go up across the mountain on this side, whop. So that tells me that there was two. There had been two watching us every day. And if we're on the porch, that means we're most likely closer to the one that's off the edge of the property here. So if we would deviate from our routine, the one across the road could see us clearly and I think would warn the other. The day that I got the one to wood knock over here, I went directly to where that one would be. If it would have wood knocked, it would have gave itself away. So when I made that left, when I went left instead of coming back down the hill, that one saw me doing it, and it made a loud wood knock to warn its partner over here. That's the impression I got from it. So what I did immediately, I just turned around and I came back to the house. And I after that, I laid off. I've not did anything because my wife and I did something one time and it's like we scared them off. I don't know how to explain it. And I realized when you do something, you deviate, they'll quit feeling comfortable, I guess. Yeah. That was about 3 months ago. When I quit doing it. Now that the weather's nice, I'm probably going to start back, but I don't know if I ever discussed with, I've had people ask about, well, do you think the paranormal? They are definitely paranormal. Now, here's what I mean. What we consider normal, they're not.
Yeah. Does
that mean they're magic or whatnot? I'm not saying that. I'm just saying there's things about these creatures that are not normal.
Right.
And absolutely. But we had gotten to where we would go out on the porch. My wife can play guitar. We would sing and all that. And these things would actually almost like they would knock back and forth, like they were audience for us. And they liked hearing the guitar late at night. But I'm guessing it was probably 9 or 10 o'clock at night on a summer night. And we started playing. Oh, I'm sorry. I got a question here. I have not put out any food for them lately. And the question is, other than apples, have you put food out for them? And if so, you stop. What was your reaction? I think I startled them so bad by changing up my routine and walking up the hill that if I would have put out apples again, they'd have thought I was trying to trick them. That's just kind of how so I stopped. Now, I do believe this. I'll probably start back and see how it goes from there, because we've noticed a few things been happening here. I was, a smack here, a whistle there. My son mentioned something, and we've had really nice weather lately too. Like everything is out and about stirring. So
boy, I really don't want to interrupt you, and I apologize for
no,
this.
no.
You said you put dusk till dawn lights out.
Yes.
And those are the lights. Are they motion detected?
No, these just stay on 24. They stay on as soon as it gets dark. There's a sensor. They turn on.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if they were like, when you walk up to someone's house, they have the motion lights that come on.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking if they were motion lights, what you could do for that at nighttime, or anybody that's listening, for if you've got motion lights around your house, and you put apples out, but first you got to do the test of go out at night, get away from your house, and then walk up to where those motion lights are at. And as soon as they come on, you stop, and then throw about 2 or 3 apples behind you before you set the motion lights off, and put about 5 or 6 in the lit up area, and see if those two in the dark, get taken, but the ones that get set off don't.
That makes good sense.
And when it comes to you talked about the infrared on trail cams and whatnot.
Right.
I haven't done too much research on trail cams, that I'm looking into getting some new ones that will send me pictures back to my phone automatically. But if they got trail cams out there that you can put a timer on to where they're only active between 7 a.m. and 5 p.m. That way, I mean, I don't think that IR is being seen in the sunlight.
No, I don't know. I don't even think it activates in sunlight.
And something activates the audio, or the video. Something activates that during the daytime. But I wouldn't think that the ultra, and I don't know to this to be true, but I wouldn't think the IR light would be seen during the day.
Yeah.
So I think if Bigfoot's going to be caught, it's going to be on a trail cam, and it's going to be during the day.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be at nighttime, because people with thermals, you yourself, and others have gotten images, the Expedition Bigfoot on thermal, but it's not sending out a signal. It's just receiving back the heat from the sensor. So people have had success with thermals, but not night vision, and not trail cams at nighttime. So I believe if they're going to be seen on trail cams, it's going to be during the day, but you're going to have to find trail cams that you can, if they even come that way, that you can just only have them working on a timer during the daytime in an active area. I don't believe in nighttime we're going to have any luck, but I think if you've got a house and you've got those motion censored lights and you're in the country or something, for a test for you, if they're getting close to your house, I would say, man, check out your system to where that light comes on, and leave a couple behind you, but leave like 2 to 3 times more in the lit area, and see what gets taken. I mean, there's no other reason, and any other animal wouldn't care about that light.
You're right.
When there's food on the ground.
Yeah. That's pretty genius. I sound like I investigate these things, man. I don't. You don't know how many people have said, "Listen, we actively investigate, and you fall across this stuff." Now, I compare it the same way as to when I moved back here. I went from where we would trophy hunt bucks. And, if you do that in bow only, and if you have limited time to hunt, because I was living in Charleston trying to come south here to hunt, man, you go years without getting a deer. Okay. I moved into this area. Now every year I was getting a big buck. And my buddy was like, "How are you doing it? Are you poaching? What are you doing, man? What are you going?" I said, "No, man." I said, the difference is I live there now. I live with it. I'm not having to go try to find it. It's there, and I live here. And I think that is why I've had so much stuff happen. It's just that we live here. And we talk to people that have lived here their whole lives and lived here for decades, and their grandpa. There's legends, there's folklore, and there's a rich history of it here, to where we just happened to move to where it was happening, and now we're part of it. And you were talking about night vision. There are night vision you can get, but no one can afford them.
Right.
Night vision, we're talking $10,000, $12,000 night vision.
Yeah.
My experience, the question is, do I think they're becoming more brazen and basically aggressive? It seems like the younger ones are more bold. We've had them moving our chairs nonstop, to where I gave up and just started putting chairs under the house. I had the one standing in the backyard that ran off. And it had to be younger. It was jacked. I mean, here's the picture that I had drawn of it right after I saw it happen.
Yeah.
But again, you could tell it was young. Now, the one that I had roar at me so loudly was a big, thick. I honestly don't know why that happened, unless it was me putting out the feeders and replenishing them all the time. And I became a food source for them for probably a year and a half. And then when my wife got sick and was in the hospital, I completely just shut down putting feed out for over a month. And that thing, when I went back out on my hunting lease that day, I think it may have followed me home. And because the area is so rugged here, if you want to get from point A to point B, you might have to start at point A, go all the way down the holler, and turn a hard right and go all the way back up another holler, then go up a logging road. Whereas if you were to look at it on a map, it looks like, well, that's only 300 yards. Well, it took you 3 miles to get there. And these things don't have to obey by little logging roads on. They just go. The one seemed it scared me so bad. I was just frozen fear. So it was aggressive. There's one area, now that I was asked that question, it brings back a thought I'd never discussed with anybody other than my wife. There was one area I used to hunt. I started getting really weird vibes. Now, when I used to do search warrants on places that people were dangerous, you knew they were. There was just, you got a vibe, man. You knew that there was something going down in that house. There's been times when we would completely clear a house, and I would just know there's just, man, we've missed something. There's something, and it was like danger. And then I would go find someone heaped up under a piece of carpet under a bed. And I remember that happened to me one time. I went on a call where there was guns involved and there was a fight broke out. We looked everywhere. And I just kept feeling like, get out. We always made it a point. You don't ever walk underneath the artificial lighting at night or whatever. You stay in the shadows. And I was going to go back to my cruiser, but something kept saying, do not step out into this lit up area. So I walked all the way back around through the shadow, was going to have to walk 4 times as far to get to my cruiser. And I saw movement. And a guy was hiding in back of an SUV and had the back window cracked, and he had a pistol. And had I walked through there, maybe his intention was to shoot me. I don't know. He had been in prison. He was out. He knew he was going back to jail. Well, I ended up arresting him that night, and he was armed. But that sixth sense you get. This area I had been hunting, and I loved it. It was a lot of deer sign. After I quit putting the feed out when my wife was sick, something happened, man, to where I would feel so uncomfortable going over there and so unsafe. I just completely quit hunting that entire area. It's hard to explain. It was almost like you would drive over a barrier, like an invisible barrier.
Yeah.
And then just your world shifted and you just did not feel safe. And you're out in the woods by yourself. You listen to that, and it just got to where I felt so uncomfortable. I just pulled my stuff out of there. I've never hunted over there since. I don't know if maybe they're staying in that area. I don't know. But the reason I think there's more to these things than what we're accustomed to, like hunting normal big game. Is when my wife was playing her guitar that night, we were singing a little bit. We were hearing the wood knocks, and this was so obvious what this did. One come walking down the hill, and you could tell it was going to try to get as close to our deck as possible. And it wasn't even trying to be quiet. And this thing went from walking to it literally got down and started belly crawling. Now, how do I know that? You could just tell by the sound of it. It went from, and my wife, my wife goes, "Oh my God, listen." She said, "That thing is crawling." And it literally, it had to have been within 10 or 15 yards of us. Now, I had an old cheap night vision. It was a Gen 1 Plus. At that time, I was not aware of the infrared and how much bright light it puts out to something they can see nocturnal. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So I'm hearing this thing, and I'm like, I'm going to get an eyewitness encounter here from 30 feet. I go walk in the house to get that night vision. I walk back outside, and it stopped crawling. So I'm like, I'm just sitting. I nonchalantly bring this up and turn it on, and I look. I don't see anything. There's nothing there, and we didn't hear anything more. We didn't see anything more for the rest of the night, and there's absolutely no way that something large was not there. There's just no way to explain it. There's no way to write that off, and there's no way I should not have seen it. I didn't have a FLIR at the time. I didn't have a thermal. I know I would have seen something. So maybe these things have developed the ability to just blend, just kind of almost like the predator, as they. And I know that sounds a little bit off the wall there, but there's only certain ways to explain it. And I do think they have a preference for females. My wife was cooking out one Saturday or Sunday for us here, and I was in the living room. She was out on the front porch. She comes in. She says, "Something's wood knocking like crazy in the middle of the day." So she said, "Come and she said, "It's did 10 or 15 times." So I'll walk out. I don't hear nothing. I kind of get bored. I was watching a football game, I think. I said, "I don't know. Maybe you're hearing a tree break or a limb fall." I come back in the house. She comes back in. She says, "As soon as you went back in the house, start doing it again." So I walk back out on the porch. Nothing. I then go back in the house, and she says, she sticks her head in the door. She goes, "It's doing." As soon as you left, it started doing it again. She said, "Do me a favor. Crack the window to the house, and I will shut the door and go back to the grill and see." She said, "Stay in here, but listen." Sure enough, she goes back to the grill. We shut the door. She goes back to the grill on the porch. I raise the window, and I hide, and I listen. As soon as she gets back over toward the grills, like that. Now, I open the door and walk out, silence. So whatever it was doing, it was acknowledging her. And whenever I would make myself present, it would stop. And whenever I would leave, it would acknowledge her. Now, here's how I proved this was not a tree breaking. So if a tree is systematically falling, it may crack, 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 and maybe it'll stop. I wanted to determine that wasn't what it was. I had to put up a new mailbox down there. So I said, well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and put this mailbox up today. And if it was something tree knocking, then it'll stop. It won't do it. But if it was a tree, I'll have to hear it, that knocking sound. I was out there for about 2 hours, and not one time did I hear a single knock. So that in and of itself, we kind of ran a little experiment to show that there was something there, and it was watching her. And my daughter has had all of those stuff going on in the backyard. That's where I got the tracks from, the ones in the mud. It was like back there, like it kind of knew where she was at. So I think there's something to that too.
Do you have specific spots where you leave apples when you leave, or is it just random?
Well, up until about November, I was leaving them right across the road on that flat where we just always hear so much activity, the wood knocks, the howls, and the roar. And they would always be gone. And my buddy's always a skeptic. He's like, well, hey, it could have been a deer. So I put them up high enough, and I broke branches up about 7.5 feet, and I jammed them onto the stub of the branch to where it, even if a raccoon would have tried to have done it, they would have to claw at it. And then there would be little pieces of it on the ground. You'd notice there was nothing. They were, but after when I did the thing and the one wood knocked at me from over here, like warning its buddy, I stopped altogether. And I'll probably start back, but I didn't want to make the mistake like we did the last time and walk outside with a night vision. And it seemed like it was months after that nothing happened here at the house. Just something little that deviated from the norm. And it's like they just completely spooked out. And, you know,
we're pushing 2 hours here, and I don't want to keep you much longer. But if I were in you, I'm jealous that you're in a situation that's kind of habitual.
Yeah.
And if I was in your situation because of me, I would take and I would go get a mailbox, and I would put that mailbox on a post where you leave apples.
Yeah.
And I would leave that mailbox so it's about 5 feet up off the ground on that post. And I would put an apple on the top where the hook is.
That's
and
smart.
I would leave that door open and put an apple on the inside or two visually, and see. I would do this to see over time if they continue to keep coming back and keep coming back. Putting it in the mailbox and shutting the door, the lid to it.
That's good.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah.
To see if they are understanding what you're doing and what the process is of what you're doing.
Right.
Damn if I wouldn't over time, when the apples are in there, I'd put the red flag up.
Yeah.
You know,
that's a good idea.
You know, I mean, it's something so basic,
Yeah.
but it's so personal. It's so focused into this spot of an area that, man, that would be a really cool experiment if I had a habituational, situation.
Right. Yeah.
And man, I just think that, and then, like I said, if you had those motion sensors on, there'd be a way to test their limits, and also it'd be a way to see their mind frame of, yeah, I'm not going in there, but
Right.
I can stay undetected out here. But in the light, I'm not going in. I'm not falling for that.
Yeah.
I've
got plenty of those motion lights that I've just got up in the solar powered. I could do that just about anywhere on my property. I've got the big pole light that's dusk to dawn in my back, and it kind of illuminates about midway down the front of my house here. But in my front yard stretches out to the peak about 190 feet. I could go to that end and that would work. I could do motion light. The mailbox thing too is pretty ingenious, because once you get to where you're closing that door, if something's opening that door, nobody can tell me that's a bear. A bear will tear the mailbox off.
But the thing about that experiment is, if something's opening that door, it's watching you.
Yeah.
It's watching you put it in, and it's watching you close it.
Yeah.
Because if they're not watching you, it's just this weird object.
Yeah. Exactly.
You know what I mean? And I think, it would be such a small cost.
Yeah.
For an experiment, you're not spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars. You go out there with a postal auger or something, about 2 minutes of that, putting it in. That's something I would do just to see, of course, if I was doing it, I would get probably nothing, because that's the kind of luck that I have.
You never know. We've had a time when my kids were younger, they're busy. I would find tracks often.
Yeah.
I found one of the best tracks I ever found was just right up on the hill here. We were just out goofing around, exploring, and we became so used to it. I would plaster cast everything. Now, I had a little garden. We used to grow pumpkins for the kids. We had a track line going through it. After our daughter claimed something smacked the house, it was 16-inch tracks, perfect. And listen, we had gotten so accustomed to this. Okay, yeah. Well, we didn't even take a picture of them.
Yeah.
Just, you get so used to it. But when something scary happens, that's when you take notice.
Yeah.
You know? But the mailbox thing, man, I'm going to try that.
Well, that'd be really interesting to see how things like that work out. You'd have to have that one on top visually to let them know it's there, you know, and maybe have the door open.
Start out open in the beginning.
Yeah.
And after that,
there.
yeah. And then after that, after a while, close it. Walk up, put them in there, and close the door. See what happens.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. That's something that's easy to do too. You don't have to put a lot of work into it, and it's something that's kind of
fairly
non-evasive, you know.
Right. It's not even passive aggressive.
Yeah,
you're letting them go at their pace too.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
As long as it's in a good, viable area, you know, spot where you have that action and whatnot.
Yeah. Well, that'd be right across the road. I mean, that's where, when I say that, it's a little 1-lane road, and there's a gas well that goes over into the forest. It's thick wooded. There's oak trees. There's deer all around. So it's, you know, we live in the middle of the woods here. So
yeah. Well, if there's deer over there, they might get the apple on the top.
Yeah.
You know, and whatnot. So I wonder what you could do to.
Well, I could put it up high enough to where deer probably couldn't get to it.
6 foot or so.
Yeah. That wouldn't be a problem.
Right on. Well, George, man, it's been great having you. Another great episode of great experiences and encounters. And I just really enjoyed having you on again. Thank you so much. I'm glad you could make it back. Yeah. We had a really great show. Good turnout. Lots of people in here. Some people, Ralph. What county? Ralph was wanting to know what county in West Virginia.
It's McDowell, southernmost county.
Southernmost county, McDowell.
Yeah, we're about 35 miles from where Expedition Bigfoot did the extensive study in Kentucky. We're about 35 miles from there in West Virginia.
Yeah, that's yeah. So everybody that joined us, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It was really great. Going to try to have somebody else on next week. Kind of playing it by ear. I'm not making as much as I would like to. This podcast my priority. As much as I would love to give all of my priority to it, but I got something here at home that has my priority. And yeah, that's just where we're at. But George, man, thank you so much for coming on. Yeah. Everybody in the chat, thank you for coming on. Thank you for being here as long as you have and stayed with us. You guys, if you know anybody that has had an encounter and would like to come somewhere and talk about it safely, send them our way. You can, if you have a suggestion of somebody you'd like to see on the show, after the show is over, come back to the YouTube channel, this episode, and type in their name. Say, hey, maybe this person would be good for you or whatnot. And reach out to them or whatnot. Also, if I hate doing this, and I should probably do it. Just that like, follow, share thing. I guess turns out it helps out the algorithm, whatnot. We haven't pushed it at all. We really haven't. But I guess if we're going to do this, why not? Might as well get it out there or whatnot. Mm-hmm. But George, I appreciate it. Everybody appreciate it. Love you guys. Miss Diane and Miss Cashew, thank you for being here. You guys are awesome. And they know, unfortunately, I am the worst at giving them an advance notice. And like my buddy Mike, who's on the team, I'll be like, hey, I'm going out to the woods 20 minutes before I leave. And he's like, yeah, maybe next time give me some notice. I'm sorry about not giving everybody notice and whatnot. So I'm not great at that. I'm not great at calling people back and returning phone calls and texts. I'm terrible at that stuff. But everybody, I thank you for being here. George, thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
I'm going to probably go out of the show the same way it came in, play one last video and let everybody leave the show with a smile. So George, thanks, bud. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. All right.
Everybody else, you guys have a great night, but let me play one more video for you guys. Thank you, George.
Thank you.
You bet. All right, everybody, let's just do this one more time. I'm just going to play the reason that I wake up every morning.
Let me see. Wait. You're going to pull my shirt down. Hold on, girl. I'm coming. Get your ball. Get your ball. Get your ball, girl. Here. Come on, boo. Get your ball. Why you done come back here messing with me? What's up, girl? What you want? You come to mess with Miss Burnell. What you want? Come on. Come on. Tell him you want to be picked up. Come on. Say hey. Say hey. Get on my shoulder. Get out of there. Say hey, girl. Get out of there before you show everything. Give me my remote control. Give me that remote control. Give me. Let me see. Still in the remote control.